What I wanted this series to be wrapped around is to sit down with commercial real estate developers, brokers, and investors to get the trends on what is going on in the commercial real estate space, bringing the knowledge from the people who have it to the people who don't. So without further ado, we have the first interview here with Mr. John Crossman, CEO of Crossman Company. They currently have 6 offices ranging in the Southeast and represents over 400 shopping centers. So, Mr. Crossman, great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Yes, so for the ones who maybe don't know of you that aren't in commercial real estate yet,
Sure.
Just kind of give them a brief overview of who you are and how long you've been in it.
I've been in commercial real estate for over 26 years now. I got my bachelor's degree from FSU in real estate. So I'm educated in real estate, going Knowles, and I'm doing real estate. Overwhelmingly, my career has been in shopping centers in the retail area, and that's how most people know me. Our company is a pure third-party services provider, and we specialize in landlord work. So we do leasing, property management, investment sales, marketing, project management, receivership. So anything a landlord would need done in the shopping center space, from an anchor strip all the way to a super regional mall in the 8 states in the Southeast U.S., we handle.
What got you into the commercial aspect of it?
Well, so my background, my dad was a pastor and civil rights leader. And so we grew up in a really purpose-driven home. We grew up in an educated home, and we grew up poor. And so that was kind of a motivator to, want to get out there, work hard, and be able to make money, and then make an impact. And so that's one part of it. Another part of it is that I'm a very tangible person. When I was doing finance classes, and you'd have portfolio management, I just connected more with real estate as investment, because that's just where I see the world, that kind of thing. And then I think the reason why commercial is that, it's business decision making, and in retail, I love meeting people from different backgrounds all over the world, different stories. And I like working hard. I like working traditional office hours. Right. So, yeah, it's a good match for me.
It's one thing that you enjoy doing outside of commercial real estate.
So my big thing is working in the education space. We have a lot of resources. We have college students and young professionals, so helping career development. And then a subset of that is really working with historically Black colleges and universities, really trying to promote more diversity in our industry. So that's a big area for me and for our company. I love that.
Yeah. And tell the audience there, if they don't know, you wrote a book there.
I did. I wrote a book called Career Killers, Career Builders, and it's focused on sort of 18 to 34-year-olds. And it's really talking about the things you need to do to, it's a skill set you have to really launch a big career, and the things that you need to think about that really could be extremely detrimental to your career.
Where can they get it at there?
It is available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. And so it's gotten great reviews. There's a website called Next Thing, and they rank products, and they ranked 1,700 career books. And mine's ranked number 10. So
wow.
We've gotten great feedback on it, and we'll hope it to be a tool for people. And I'll tell you, there's parts of it that sort of dive into a little bit of the mental health issues we see, and it's a big issue in our country right now. And so I think I like to use it as a springboard to have some of those sort of harder conversations.
Right. Yeah. How do you see commercial real estate changing, especially on the retail side?
So when you look at retail in a big picture, it's actually doing really well. There's more expansion, rental rates are increasing, occupancy rates are increasing. So things are actually relatively pretty strong. And there's a thing called the halo effect, which is that when an online business opens physical stores, their online sales go up. If they close physical stores, online sales go down. If someone buys something online and they return to a physical store, they spend more money at the physical store. So it's really been proven out that if you're going to be a big online player, you need to have physical stores. So all that stuff's good. I mean, so overarchingly, I feel positive about retail.
Yeah.
The hard part of retail right now, it's so dynamic. It's changing so much. It's evolving so much. And that can be overwhelming. I was at a ULI conference earlier this year, and they did a presentation on augmented reality. And to learn about augmented reality and how is that going to impact our leases, So there's all these kind of new kind of things coming up, and it just makes the business more complicated. So there's stress that comes out of that. So even though I'd say things are good, it's still a strenuous time just because so many things happening.
Right. Why do you think that is with it? Do you think it's like more of a marketing play with having a retail location and people seeing that
I mean,
boosts the online sales?
yeah. I think that, look, there's certain dynamics of humans that are very consistent throughout all time, and one of them is that to be healthy people, we need to diet, exercise, all those kinds of things, eat right. We also need this. Humans are pack animals. We're made to be in relationship with one another. And so great retail developers that create a sense of community. You think about Chick-fil-A and Publix, done a phenomenal job where those places are comforting in their home and they promote connection of humans. And so that's a key thing. The second thing is that through all history of the world is people tend to shop in about a 2-mile radius of their home. And so being locally connected is just very, very key. So the thought process that we're all going to be in our houses and have everything delivered by Amazon, that's ridiculous. Like, that's not going to be. It's a component, but there's a need to connect outside of that. And plus, you got to remember, there's all kinds of things that, they feel better when you look at them physically. There's a lot of neighborhoods in America where people don't want things delivered to their homes. And then, of course, there's always impulse buying.
Right.
So it's part of the equation. It's never going to erase it. I will tell you that when I got in this business in '93, there was a season where everyone told me that Walmart was going to destroy all retail. There was a season where I was told the internet was going to beat all retail. And so the Amazon thing, it's like, well, it's just another thing. But it's really, it's always back to the core.
Right. And do you see many businesses, downsizing to kind of, maybe they have the retail still there, but then, having a warehouse space or something somewhere else?
Sure. So the efficiency is what you're talking about.
Right.
And I think that's a really great thing. And, some places are getting bigger because they're trying to do more experiential components to it.
Right.
And some places are getting smaller because, to your exact point, if they can lease warehouse space cheaper and they can just deliver things faster. So you're going to see both. I mean, look, it's great to be in a time when things are efficient and communication's better, because that helps ward off recessions. You think about what happened in the Great Depression, where things were totally out of whack and that totally messed up pricing. So to have more things happening, technology, information, that's a really good part to it.
Yeah. You just brought up a good point with the augmented reality, going into the next question, which is, what are those technological things kind of out of someone's control? Or at least, do you think that, because I know on like the residential side, right, you have Zillow and these other companies who are almost, now they're buying up properties and kind of almost kicking, the agent or the broker out of it. How do you see technology or something else in the commercial space coming along?
I haven't really seen that, I haven't seen it in a hardcore, this is changing everything, this is the new, whatever. It's a lot of little things that move things around. Like let me give you an example. So how does Uber impact, retail? How's Uber and Lyft? Well, one example would be is that some malls have realized they don't need as much parking as they used to. And so they've taken spaces that reserve parking and turned them into out parcels and made more money based on that, right? So we see lots of examples like that, being mindful of those kinds of things. There's not one big thing that's just completely dominating, but there's all kinds of things that the volume of them is big. It's a big deal. And just a sort of side note is that, one of the things that's challenging about today's world is the labor market, and that it's so tight. Finding and recruiting talent is hard, and then just sort of managing through that. It's funny. I do a lot of writing in different subjects, and I'll post them on LinkedIn. And I'm always curious, like, which ones get a ton of attention.
Yeah. And
one of the most popular ones I was a contributor to on was about ghosting. And, employees accepting positions and then disappearing, that started in the dating world, and that's really rooted in the dating world. And then coming to the business world, it's even ruder. Well, when I wrote it, I posted it on my LinkedIn. I had people I didn't know, but they were commenting and they were supporting ghosting. They were really trashing big companies that didn't get back to people when they applied. And that was interesting to sort of probe into that's a loss of humanity, and so that's an interesting one as well, sort of open-ended topic. I would think that would be a closed topic, like, hey, we all agree that's wrong, don't do that, but it's culturally sort of out there.
Wow. So I'm sure that's changed kind of over the years, whereas when you were growing up, I'm sure.
No, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No. Well, one dynamic is that when I was growing up, you would go to a store with your parents. Your parents got all the respect, and you as a kid did not get the respect. And if you went by yourself someplace, you weren't getting treated respect. People in your generation who grew up online shopping, online shopping, your experience and my experience, your parents' experience was exactly the same. And so that's kind of intriguing. Sometimes it impacts people's expectations of what's going to happen in a retail experience because of their interaction online. And of course, sometimes that can be somewhat anonymous. People may say things in more inappropriately. I've had at times, I find this fascinating, where I've had somebody say something to me on Facebook and aggressively, they're mad about, some issue. And a lot of times I'll respond back and I'll say, well, please give me a call, 407-581-6218.
Right.
And I never get called. And that's fascinating to me too. It's like, gosh, if you're going to go to the trouble to post something and you're upset about it, let's talk about it. And I will tell you that vast majority of the time they got the wrong guy. It's it's not something I have any control of or whatever. But I think we need to keep diving in and more having more human component to things. It's
more
key.
Conversation.
Right. We need that.
Background behind it.
For sure.
Do you see any other technology kind of coming in and disrupting the commercial real estate space as far as platforms?
I do think that all the design delivery services and all different spectrums are great. I think that it's in a retailer, one of the hardest things right now is you got to be doing everything well, right? You have to have a great online presence, you have to have a great physical presence, and you have to really be able to connect to your community, that online community and the community around you, and staying in touch with that is a big deal. It's funny because I was doing some research very recently about, are there any technology that can help us lease space? And so I got referred to a company that was really interesting. One of the things about them, though, is that they're a startup, which can be a little bit concerning. But they had all this data about shopping centers, like through an algorithm with different resources they had. They can tell you where did the consumers come from, where are they shopping, where else are they shopping, this kind of thing. And it's super fun and exciting. But as I dove into it, it really didn't teach us anything. It would say things like, well, at this public shopping center, the public shoppers also shop at Chick-fil-A. Well, we knew that, or they all live close to the property. So it was helpful technologically in an affirmation way. Like if you're having a presentation to somebody in New York City, they didn't know the market and you needed hard data to back up your point, that would be helpful. But it wasn't helpful as far as looking around the corner and as far as seeing what's coming,
Yeah.
So it's still a fluid market for all that.
Yeah. What would you want to see kind of come in to help you, with the leasing and getting more exposure to, those properties for landlords?
Something that I wasn't seeing, maybe there's a use that I wouldn't naturally think would be a good combination with grocery store and a mall that they would highlight. But we've learned a lot of that over the last 10 years. The last 10 years, 10 years ago, you wouldn't be talking about putting a medical use next to a Target or a college in a mall and stuff like that. And we've really learned that a lot of uses can work better together. I used to talk about mixed use projects, and I would more talk about mixing the uses within the projects. And one of the things I also talk about is that in the future, retail is not going to look like 1980. It's going to look like 1880. And I know that sounds completely insane, but what I mean by that is if you think about what downtown areas looked like in the 1880s, everything was there together. Everything was mixed. It really wasn't until the explosion of the suburbs in the 50s that we started taking retail and segmenting it to certain areas. But that's really not functional. And so it typically does better when it's mixed in with other uses. So when someone says, oh, that retail center is dying because X retailer is going down, well, I'm like, well, we're going to replace that X retailer with medical or education or a gym or religious or any number of uses that do phenomenal there. Well, we're still renting space. We're still creating consumers and property. So some people, purists might say, well, that's not retail. And I would say, well, it's service retail or medical retail or community retail, whatever you want to talk about it, but it's still helping drive the same consumer.
The greatest challenge that you've had to overcome in your commercial real estate career?
Well, I would say, two things. One sort of obvious and then one a little bit deeper. The first one is that, the best thing about the industry is the people and the worst thing is the people. I had a chance to spend 24 hours with Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, and so I stayed in his house, going to have dinner and breakfast and lunch with him and a small group of people. And he was reflecting on his career, and he was a self-made billionaire. And he actually got teary-eyed where he would talk about some former employee that he really helped out or a employee that ended up stealing money. But it was really about the relationships. And so I have really found that. And I have people I really care about and been brokenhearted for different reasons. And then there's other people who have been just so wonderful and great. And then as I get older, you lose some. So that's sad. So that relationship component is a big deal. As far as the toughest thing to overcome, though, it's actually really been more internal to me. which is just living a more balanced life. That I tend to do things like really focus on career, really focus on one thing. And I always talk about, I have, my family, I have eating right and exercising and my work and my faith, those 5 things. And I usually get 3 to 4 going really well at the same time, but it's very hard to get 5 for 5.
Yeah.
So learning that balance has been, it's a continued evolution for me. Right. And part of that's learning how to take care of myself better. And so I've had some health issues over the years that sort of have come out of that, where I've just been out of balance. And so digging into that and recovering that, it's been challenging. I had a battle with clinical depression back in 2013, which was like the hardest medical issue I've ever had to get through. I was glad of it because I really learned a lot, but just learning how to deal with something like that, it's very challenging.
Yeah. And that's a good point that you brought up as far as that work-life balance. I think everyone kind of asks that question, how do you balance work and life and family and all of that, especially in a day and age where it feels like everyone is, you would think they're more connected with technology, but in essence, they're less connected. And not having those conversations. But, how do you kind of balance, utilizing technology, right, in helping you with business and in your career, but then knowing when to kind of shut that off, not responding to emails or text messages or, LinkedIn messages or whatever it is. How have you kind of balanced that?
Well, first I want to tell you that there's a real benefit to hard work, that people will have the expression that nobody on their deathbed wishes they have spent more time in the office. And I don't think that's totally true, because there's a lot of people that die alone. There's a lot of people that die alone because they didn't have any money and their children don't have any money and they don't have the resources. So I do think there's people that regret actually not working harder. The opposite of that is obviously working too hard and being too out of balance. So there is some sort of combination to that we have to work on. I think the second thing is that having healthy boundaries, and then communicating those boundaries. I was off of work. I was working out from the house because of the hurricane. And, I told my daughters, I'm like, I'm in work mode right now. I've got to be in a different part of the house and doing work. But then getting home and turning the phone off and being very, very focused on them. And they'll get on me about having my phone on or working on stuff. Yeah. So it's a constant battle. I think the key is being intentional, right? Being intentional. And being thoughtful. And I would always recommend to people take time to go to funerals, take time to go to weddings, really trying to be present in different places, visiting people in the hospital. And of course, on all that, when you have time to work hard, make sure you work hard, because that gives you the license to be able to miss other things. Right.
Flexibility. Right?
Yeah. So they're all correlated.
Someone wanting to get into commercial real estate again, maybe they're in college and going through, the College of Business, not sure exactly which route they want to go, finance or real estate or marketing or whatever it is. What's one piece of advice that you could give to them? Or maybe they just started their career.
Oh, sure. So my one piece of advice for college student people getting the business starting career would be take advantage of my resources. Take advantage of my resources. On my website is a guide to commercial real estate. It's for that exact demographic. Download it. It's free. It's available in 5 languages. Gives a really good overview of commercial real estate. I won't meet with anybody who wants to get in real estate unless they've read that first, because it gives a really solid overview. The second thing is underneath that is we have a YouTube channel, and on my YouTube channel, the Crossman CO YouTube channel, we have all kinds of videos, lectures, colleges I've given. You can watch those videos and free, and there's all that kind of information. I mentioned my book, Career Killers, Career Builders, which I recommend people read. I also recommend they read Thrive by Blaine Strickland, and Don't Say No to the Prospect by Beth Azor. And Blaine lives in Orlando, Beth lives in South Florida, but they're very, very pro student and young professional people. And so I recommend their books as well. So I just would say, again, back to the big thing is there's lots of resources out of them. A lot of them are free. And if not free, they're really inexpensive. And I would dive into those. And I would dive into those before you try to meet with a professional so that your questions are more thoughtful and insightful and you have a little bit more idea what you're trying to do. Right. When we meet college students, we ask, what do you want to do in real estate? The number one answer is developer. And I always joke because I think, developers make the most money, and they do, but they're also most likely to commit suicide and go to prison and declare bankruptcy. And that's true. That's And so not everybody's cut out to be a developer. The person that's to be a developer has a very specific personality type.
Right.
Other people will be phenomenal appraisers or mortgage brokers, or are thinking through, do you want to be 100% commission or not? And so getting really set in the trajectory of your passion, your gifting, your skill set. If you don't have a skill set, acquiring a skill set. If you're an introvert, you can learn how to network, but really being open and really grasping that in totality is a big deal.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you brought up a good point with developer. It feels like everyone always kind of goes for the money.
Right.
I mean, how would you say, I think this is everywhere. It's almost like if you go to school for nursing, right? I mean, what nursing do you want to get into? Or you go to school to be a doctor, I mean, is there like key questions that someone should be asking in the college setting of what do I want to be, other than doing an internship and say every single aspect of development, investment, brokerage,
Well, I would say this, first off, is that when you get involved into a career that you're passionate about, and by the way, you can choose passion, okay? Like people can think, well, I'm not passionate about that. Well, I wasn't passionate about kidney dialysis until my dad went on dialysis. I wasn't passionate about staying against abusive husbands until my sister got abused by her husband, right? So, things you can sort of develop that passion. And so when you pursue things in an aggressive way, passionate way, you're going to do well financially. You just are, right? But if you're not really into it and you want to leave the office as early as possible, that's not going to work. Most of my career, I never looked at the clock. I just worked until, I felt like I was done working, because I was passionate about it. So that's the first part. The second part, I'd say, is someone's just taking a personality test and know kind of like where your gifting is. I did a predictive index recently, and I'm a maverick. And when you think about that personality type, it's like I take risk. Cold calling is easier for me, things like that. So I have more of an assertive personality. And if somebody takes the test and they're the opposite of me, it could be tough for them to get into brokerage or something that really requires that skill set. Not impossible, but you got to know that. Yeah. And then you mentioned internships. The other thing I would tell people is just trying to job shadow. I think that if you try to get exposure to as many different people in the industry as possible, you'll find your tribe. You'll get around a group of people and you're like, gosh, this feels like me. These people kind of think and operate like I do. Or you find somebody that, gosh, I do not belong here. It's not my thing. Right. And so doing as much research on that and being around those environments as much as possible is helpful. Yeah. I feel comfortable, with my people. I grew up in a very dynamic background and lived in a lot of different cities. I lived around a lot of different cultures. And that's really helped me well in being in the retail space, because that retail world has a ton of that kind of aspect. Yeah. If somebody's more of a environment where they really like working with architects and engineers and attorneys, they were better office leasing agent, but really trying to figure that out. And you just need to lean in as much as you can.
Right. Like you said, just lean in and really just doing as much as possible to figure out, what is your purpose, what drives you, talking with those people of, the industries that you want to get into. So
I'd say one last thing in all that is I describe myself as a devout capitalist, right? I really believe in making money and being as successful as you can. When you do that, you can also do other really cool things and really help people. Right. And so in the civil rights space, the social justice space, I've done a ton of work. And one of the ways I'm able to do the work is because I can write checks. Right. And so I think that sometimes people might think to get in real estate, and maybe the more noble thing to do is to go into low-income housing or things like that. And certainly if that's what you do, it's great. But another thing to do is to go into some higher end field and then, do volunteer work and donate to Habitat for Humanity. Yeah. So both those are good paths. Right. So there's all kinds of ways to get there.
Yeah. Very good. Well, kind of wraps it up, but appreciate the time there.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah. Great speaking with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.